fear of not being loved, fear of disappointing others, fear that if they stop giving so much, people will walk away, fear that if they choose themselves, they will be called selfish, fear of being left alone. And so, slowly, without fully realizing it, they begin to build a life where they are always available for everyone else, but almost never for themselves.
And that becomes deeply exhausting.
Because one thing is to love, and something very different is to disappear inside love, inside helping, or inside constant giving. Jung would say that this is where a mask is operating. The mask of the one who always holds everything together. The mask of the one who always can. The mask of the one who asks for nothing. The mask of the one who adapts. The mask of the one who keeps giving and giving, even while becoming emptier inside. And there comes a point when the person no longer knows whether they help out of love or out of fear of no longer being accepted if they stop. This is one of the quietest traps of the social mask. On the outside, it can look like virtue, but on the inside, many times, it is self-abandonment. Because if you only feel valuable when you are solving everyone else's problems, when you are holding everything together, when you are useful, when you do not disturb anyone, when you never ask for too much, then your value is no longer rooted in your truth. It is rooted in the role you learn to play. And that weighs far more than it seems. Because one day, you get tired. One day, you break down. One day, you simply cannot keep going the same way. And that is when you discover something painful. That maybe you have spent years being there for everyone, but you never really learned how to be there for yourself. And then another difficult truth begins to appear. Some people may have grown used to your devotion, but not to your humanity. They were used to you listening. They were used to you understanding. They were used to you giving in. They were used to you staying. They were used to you asking for very little. They were used to you not taking up too much space with your pain. And so, the day you need to be the one who is held, the one who is listened to, the one who is accompanied, the one who is understood, you suddenly realize that many do not know how to be there. And from that, a deep wound is born. I was always there. Why is no one here for me now?
That hurts. It hurts a lot.
But there is something important here, and I want to say it very clearly. Focusing on yourself is not a betrayal of anyone.
Focusing on yourself is not selfishness.
Focusing on yourself does not mean you have stopped loving.
Focusing on yourself means you are no longer abandoning yourself.
And for many people, that is already revolutionary. Because they have spent so much time living in emotional survival mode, trying to be useful, loved, needed, or indispensable, that they no longer even know what it feels like to stand in their own center. That is why when they begin to think about themselves, guilt appears.
Guilt for resting. Guilt for setting limits. Guilt for not always being available. Guilt for saying no. Guilt for no longer carrying everything.
And yet, many times, that guilt is not a sign that you are doing something wrong. It is a sign that you are breaking a habit that kept you far away from yourself. Because thinking about yourself does not make you a bad person.
Beginning to choose yourself is not cruelty. Setting a limit does not destroy love.
Sometimes, on the contrary, it cleans it.
It makes it more real, more honest, more dignified.
Focusing on yourself does not mean you stop loving others. It means you stop disappearing inside love, inside helping, or inside sacrifice.
And this is where the real work begins.
It is not about becoming cold. It is not about closing yourself off. It is not about loving less. It is about asking yourself something simple, but essential.
Where am I in my own life?
Am I included in the love I give? Or am I always the one left out?
Do I care for myself with the same compassion I give to others? Do I listen to myself? Do I respect myself? Do I choose myself? Or do I only show up to be useful while disappearing inside? Focusing on yourself means beginning to make room for yourself.
It does not have to happen all at once.
Sometimes it begins in small things.
It begins when you stop saying yes automatically. It begins when you stop running to rescue everyone else. It begins when you allow yourself to rest. It begins when you listen to your exhaustion. It begins when you no longer over-explain yourself for having a boundary. It begins when you understand that your value does not depend on how much you sacrifice.
Because a life in which you always leave yourself for last eventually turns you into a stranger to yourself. And that exhausts the soul.
So today I want to leave you with this question. If you are always there for everyone else but never for yourself, then who is really taking care of your life? And maybe the time has come for that answer to begin to change. Practical exercise for this session. Focus on yourself without feeling guilty. Now let us move into the practical part of this session. I do not want this to remain only as an interesting idea. I want you to take it into your real life. Because many people understand, in theory, that they need to focus more on themselves. But when the moment comes, they feel guilty. They feel selfish. They feel uncomfortable. And they go back to the same old pattern, helping everyone, adapting to everyone, and leaving themselves for last. So today I want to offer you a very simple exercise. Simple, but powerful. Take a notebook or a piece of paper and answer these 3 questions slowly and honestly. Question 1. Where in my life am I constantly available for others, but rarely available for myself? Think carefully. Maybe it is in your family, maybe in your friendships, maybe in your job, maybe in a relationship, maybe in the way you answer messages, solve problems, or carry emotional weight that is not really yours. Write down the places where you feel you are always on for others, but almost never present for yourself. Do not judge what you write, just name it. Because naming a pattern is the first step to stepping out of it.
Question 2. What do I fear might happen if I choose myself more?
This question is very important. If you focused more on yourself, what do you fear? Do you fear that people will reject you? Do you fear disappointing someone? Do you fear conflict? Do you fear being misunderstood? Do you fear being called selfish? Do you fear losing love? Do you fear being left alone? Write it honestly, because guilt usually hides fear, and once you see the fear clearly, the guilt begins to lose some of its power. Question 3. What is one small way I can stop abandoning myself this week?
Not something dramatic, not something theatrical, something real.
Maybe it is saying no once. Maybe it is resting without apologizing. Maybe it is not answering immediately. Maybe it is giving yourself 1 hour that truly belongs to you. Maybe it is not fixing someone else's emotional chaos. Maybe it is listening to your own tiredness instead of ignoring it. Choose one small act of self-respect, not 10. 1. Because change becomes real when it becomes concrete. Now, once you have answered those 3 questions, I want you to do one more thing. Read what you wrote, and then say this to yourself, either out loud or inwardly. Focusing on myself is not selfishness. It is the beginning of self-respect. I do not need to abandon myself in order to be loved.
Say it slowly. Let those words land.
Because many people have spent years confusing self-erasure with love, and this exercise is about beginning to separate those 2 things. Love does not require your disappearance, care does not require your exhaustion, and goodness does not require self-betrayal. Now let us move into the practice for the week. Practice for the week. During this week, I want you to observe one thing very carefully. When do I leave myself behind in order to keep others comfortable? Watch for that moment. It may happen when you say yes too quickly, when you smile even though something in you says no, when you over-explain a boundary, when you rush to help before checking your own energy, when you silence what you feel in order not to disturb anyone. Every time that happens, pause for a moment and ask yourself, am I acting from love or from fear?
That question can change a lot.
Because sometimes what looks like kindness is really fear of rejection. Sometimes what looks like generosity is really fear of conflict. Sometimes what looks like patience is really difficulty setting a boundary. You do not need to become harsh. You do not need to stop being a good person. You only need to become more conscious. And once during this week, I want you to do one visible act of self-prioritizing. Just one. Something small, but real. It could be saying no without guilt, delaying a response, taking time for yourself, protecting your rest, speaking honestly, or not rescuing someone immediately. And after you do it, notice what happens inside you. Does guilt appear? Does fear appear? Does relief appear? Does strength appear? Write it down, because your reaction will teach you a lot about the mask you have been wearing. And here is the most important part. Do not punish yourself for feeling guilty. Guilt may still show up. That is normal. The goal is not to feel perfect. The goal is to stop obeying guilt automatically. That is how inner change begins, little by little, with awareness, with honesty, with practice. So this week, stay with this sentence. I can care for others without abandoning myself. And every time you forget it, return to it. Because the more you practice making room for yourself, the less foreign you will feel inside your own life.